It's starting.
Are we live?
Yes.
Lana, kill the just a tad bit, okay?
But Daddy,
All right, guys. Good evening. Long time no talk. Y'all have to excuse me. Life has gotten in the way of things. I've been half crazy. My daughter was in the hospital due to the flu. She caught it from her brother. No matter how much I tried to keep him away from her, it still circled through the house and she got it. On Tuesday, I went to go pick her up and she was limp. She didn't open her eyes. She was really hot. I thought about doing skin to skin, and even then she was still on fire. So I called the pediatrician and they told me to go straight to Vanderbilt. And we were there until Thanksgiving. But she's better now. She's sleeping. She's back to her room by herself, eating every hour on the hour. I'll give it a few minutes and let everybody get logged on. Comment down below, let me know that you're here. Give me a heart, thumbs up, something. And guys, in order to reach more people, I am thinking about not necessarily making the group public, but in my lives, I might go ahead and share them to the public page. That way we can reach more people. I have shared a few, and I did notice that, like I said, we did reach more people when I shared it and made it public to the public page. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, if you guys have any questions or concerns, go ahead and ask me or mention them. That way I can answer them and address them as I'm talking. I want to talk about the composition of breast milk. And what I mean by that, what it's made of, what the contents are. So there's only one type of breast milk, but there are different parts to that milk. So it's called foremilk and hindmilk. So foremilk is the milk at the beginning of the breastfeeding session or the pumping session. It's the cloudy water kind of looking milk. Think of, a glass of water and you have a little bit of milk in there. It's kind of cloudy, like a gray color. Translucent almost, not exactly clear, but it's kind of like murky water. This is the milk that is low in fats but high in lactose. Lactose is the sugary milk, or the milk the part of the milk that contains the glucose. So it's really sweet, and you get that at the beginning of the milk, the beginning of the session. The second part of that is the hind milk. The hind milk is what I like to call the cream of the crop, or the fatty creamy milk. And that is towards the end of the breastfeeding session or the pumping session. And that's where all the really thick fat is inside of the milk. The reason that I want to talk about this, hey Miss Duffy. The reason that I wanted to talk about this is because I get questions all the time on how long you should nurse your baby, or how long you should breastfeed, how long you should pump. And really the answer is, one, once your breasts are completely empty, but two, in order to be sure to get both the foremilk and the high milk, you want to nurse for about 15 to 20 minutes, maybe even 30 minutes, just to be sure that you're completely emptying. What happens is, at the beginning of the feed or the nursing pumping session, your foremilk comes out. So that is the milk that is at the tip of your breast. It hits your nipple faster. The hind milk is behind your ducts. So the foremilk is very thin. It's a thin consistency and it flows right out. The hind milk is a lot thicker and it gets stuck in between the ducts as it comes out and reaches your nipple. That is the reason that it is coming out towards the end of the feeding, and it's important to feed throughout that so that you can get both the hind milk and the foremilk, or the foremilk and the hind milk. A lot of people ask, you know, why their baby is fussy, even though, you know, they nurse for 5 to 7 minutes. And the answer is because they're just getting that sweet milk. They're not getting the fat, the stuff that kind of sticks, that lasts a little bit longer. And that is the reason they're not nursing long enough to get that. One of the symptoms that you can notice in your baby if they are just getting the formula or not nursing long enough to get to that high milk, if they're irritable, if they're gassy, if they're colicky, you know, they're fussy, they're waking up out of their sleep and passing gas, and, you know, just not very settled. That could be due to the high milk imbalance. And again, that's because their baby is not nursing long enough to get to that fatty milk. Between feedings, the milk collects throughout the breast and it gradually moves toward the nipple. So a lot of mothers tend to feed on one side for 5 minutes, stop, and then offer the breast, the opposite breast. That is wrong. You should completely empty out one breast before offering the other one. Again, I say 15 to 20 minutes. If your baby is falling asleep, like I always say, you need to aggravate them, whether it's tickling their feet, rubbing their hair back, taking something wet and brushing it across their face, their neck, tickling their back. You want to make sure that they're getting both the foremilk, which is first, and then the hind milk. Let's see. And as the breast empties, the fat moves down to the duct and out of the nipple. So if you are feeding incorrectly and you are only allowing your baby to nurse on one side for 5 minutes, and then you go back and offer the other breast, when you go back to the first breast that you stopped at, you're going to have fat first, and that is because you didn't completely empty, you didn't completely, you know, go through the cycle, the process of I can't talk, of expelling the foremilk and then the hind milk. So let's think of it as when you go to your bathroom and you turn on, hey Kayla, it's almost time, right? Think of it as when you go to the faucet to turn on your hot water starts off as cold and then it gradually gets warm. This is the same concept of the foremilk and high milk. When you first start feeding, you get that thin, sugary milk, and then as the feeding progresses, you get that hind milk, which is the fatty, all the cream of the crop, the good stuff. And it's not something that is inconsistent. It's consistent all the time. You get the foremilk first, and then you get the hind milk. So again, I want to go back to the fact that it's important that you completely empty your breast and you completely let the baby nurse longer than 5 minutes so that you can get the foremilk first and the high milk. And I know that I sound like a broken record, but it is really important. Number one, so that you can establish your supply and ensure that your baby's getting everything that they need. If you have a bunch of foremilk or the cloudy, clear, murky water kind of milk, that could be a sign of an oversupply. So in the early weeks, the 6 weeks, if you are pumping and it is that color, don't be alarmed. That's just your body dealing with the oversupply. So you'll have a lot of that foremilk. And then as time progresses and your milk matures, it'll turn the creamier color. So this here, I don't know how well you can see that, but this is mature milk, or the creamy milk. And you can always tell whenever you pump or you pour into a bottle, if you let it sit, the fat will start separating. So you'll have that thick layer at the top that's white and creamy, and then you'll have that light colored murky water looking milk at the bottom. Those are the two different contents of the milk, and you can always tell. A goal of mine that I haven't reached yet, but I had other mothers in different groups say, whenever they pump, they have like a thick milk plug, and it's like a big chunk of fat, and they scream for joy whenever they get a milk plug. It's supposed to be the fattiest part of the milk that you could possibly get, and it just sits at the top of the milk and it looks like a chocolate chip. It's formed a little bit. It's not completely solid, but it's like a chocolate chip and it's about that big. So I have never experienced one personally, but I'm hoping that I could get at least one milk plug throughout my journey. Let's see. So let's talk about, I know I mentioned it briefly, but too much milk, or if you think that your baby is not getting that high milk or you're not letting them nurse for a long time, symptoms are gastrointestinal issues. So if your baby's experiencing gas, runny stools or green poopy stools, that could be an indicator that there's a high milk milk imbalance and that they're not getting that fatty milk. So the sugary water, just think of it as you eating too much candy or too many sweets. It upsets your stomach and then you have to go boo-boo. It's equivalent to that. The milk is very sugary and stuff, and without the fatty content, it's harder on the baby's GI tract to break down. Too much sugar, upsets the stomach and stuff. So that's why it's important to ensure that you guys are nursing your babies for an adequate amount of time so that they can get the milk and then the high milk after. The high milk is what's going to help digest everything. You're going to experience less gas, less irritability when you properly nurse the baby for a certain amount of time. Do any of you have any questions? Anybody have any specific topics they want me to cover? I know I'm all over the place and I try to develop content based off of my personal experiences, and I try to touch base on things that I wish people would have told me throughout my journey the first time. So if there's anything that you guys want me to cover that's not clear, you have questions, if you don't want to ask it throughout the live, you can send us a message and we'll get back to you. I'm not going to say I'm running out of stuff to talk about because I can talk about everything when it comes to breastfeeding, but I'm trying to make sure I give you guys the important stuff that you can actually use and be beneficial with throughout your journeys. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. Nope. Okay, well, I don't have anything else on milk, high milk. If you guys need to refer back to anything that I have stated, or you want a credible source, because again, my disclaimer is I'm not a professional, I'm not licensed, this is my experience. I hope to one day be certified and be a international board certified lactation consultant. I'm working on that. But again, these are my experiences. A credible source that you guys can refer back to is kellymom.com. That is my go-to for all of my breastfeeding information. That's a reliable source that I have had dealings with for quite some time. So again, if you guys need to refer back or you want to see the statistics, the science behind this, kellymom.com. Okay, so Zamir is 2 months now. When you pump, you give him 4 ounces. Is that enough, and how often should you feed him? So you should always follow your baby's cues. And by that, I mean when they're trying to put their hands in their mouth, or they're bobbing their head up against something trying to look for the nipple. Follow baby cues, number 1. Number 2, hey Jessica, I'll recap in just a minute. Number 2, you can never overfeed a breastfed baby. So don't limit your baby. If your baby is not satisfied after 4 ounces, feel free to give him more, or her. Him, I'm sorry. Feel free to give him more. Don't restrict him. Now, as far as leaving the baby, they always say 1.5 to 2 ounces per hour that you are gone is what you should leave for the baby to eat.
That's the orange one.
I think that is more so for, those that don't know how to handle breast milk, or they don't know anything about pace feeding. I try not to get into all of that. If she wants more milk, then I'm gonna give it to her. Again, you can't overfeed a breastfed baby. Breast milk does not have a bunch of fillers and stuff in there. So, number one, follow his cues. Number two, listen to him. If he is still fussy after 4 ounces of milk and he's still rooting, trying to chew on his hands, give him some more milk. He'll let you know when he's full. Look for relaxed hands. That is a sign that baby's completely full. When they get those heavy eyes and stuff. I don't really have a guide that I go by. I follow her. I followed Landon. Some others will say that you're feeding your baby way too much in one setting. But they grow. They go through growth spurts. So one day he may take 4 ounces. The next day he might just take 2 ounces. Follow your baby. Now, an 8-ounce bottle at 2 months now, that I'm gonna say is way too much. Also, feel his belly. I feel hers. When it's really tight, that means that they've had enough. And if he is too full or he is overfed, he will let you know. For London, after I give her a bottle and she still wants to nurse, I let her do that. And then she'll end up throwing up, like completely projectile vomiting. And that is because she has too much milk in her stomach. She hasn't burped. It hasn't digested. Like, he will let you know that he's taking in too much. If you're worried about family members overfeeding him or giving him way too much, look up pace feeding. And what pace feeding is, you take you take the baby bottle and you do it at an angle, or you do it kind of sideways, and you let the milk, you let the baby suckle and the milk just flow into the mouth, kind of like a breast. So it's not pouring directly in there, but it's mimicking the nipple. It's allowing the baby to take in milk at a certain time that they want, versus it just pouring all into their mouth and them getting really full. Some moms say that they save milk that way, pace feeding. Again, I don't get into all of that. If I have a 2-ounce bottle and I feed her and she's still fussy, aggravated, I'm going to give her some more milk. I'm going to give her some more milk until she signals that she doesn't want any more, which is the relaxed hands, limp arms, heavy eyes, tight belly. If she's falling asleep, I'm done. I know that she's satisfied. But ideally, I say for 2 months, you probably want to do every 2 to 3 hours as far as feeding. If he's not giving you any cues, don't wake a sleeping baby. I think he's old enough that he can sleep longer. So if he's not waking up every 2 to 3 hours to feed him, then that's perfectly fine. I wouldn't let him go past three, maybe 5-6 hours. I wouldn't let him go past that. You should be waking him up, but he's fine for you to go based off of his cues. He's old enough. It's only when babies are young, like 6 weeks or younger, that you should worry about feedings like that. Jessica, do you have any questions? My topic was foremilk and hindmilk. I'll recap. Foremilk is the first milk at the beginning of a session. It's the murky water looking milk. Excuse me. It's not really clear, but it's really light colored. That milk is the sugary part of the milk. It's high in glucose. And then you have hind milk, which is towards the end of the feeding, which has all of the fat, the good stuff to help digest the milk. Foremilk and hind milk. I picked this topic because a lot of mothers ask how long they should feed their baby, why their baby seems fussy. And sometimes the reason for that could be that they're just getting the foremilk, which is low in fat and high in sugar. It causes irritability in the baby, so gas, screaming, colicky symptoms. They're not getting enough fat to help digest the glucose or the sugar in the milk, which is also called the lactose. The high milk is what you want to root for. So I say ideally you should nurse for about 15 to 20 minutes so that one, they can get that foremilk, and then the hind milk, which follows. The foremilk is a lot thinner, and that is the reason that it comes out first. Whereas the hind milk, it gets stuck in between the ducts and the tissue, and it travels a lot further So it comes out a lot slower, and a lot of mothers don't let the baby nurse up until that particular point. So they're waking up after 10 minutes, 15 minutes, still wanting to be on the breast, and that's because, one, they're completely not emptying the breast, and two, they're not making it towards that high in fat milk. Jessica, an example that I used for this is, think of going to your faucet and turning on your water. Say that you want your hot water. It doesn't automatically come out hot. It's going to start off cold, and then it's going to eventually warm up and become hot. But you've got to give it time. Vice versa, if you turn on the hot water right after you just had it running, I'd say like not even 3 minutes ago, it's going to start off as hot, or be really, really hot. So that is my example of foremilk and hind milk. And when you start off on one breast and you don't completely empty it, like after 5 minutes and they only get the foremilk, then you offer the second breast, they're getting foremilk again, and then when you put them back on the original breast that you started with, the fat is going to come out first, and it can cause an imbalance in the baby. Too much foremilk, too much foremilk, which is the sugary stuff, can cause gas, irritability, and then green loose stools, kind of like diarrhea. Too much sugar. Think of it as you eating too many sweets, your stomach is upsetting, and then you've got to poop. It's the same thing in the baby. So that was my topic of choice for tonight. And again, Jessica, everybody else, if you guys have anything specific that you want me to talk about, let me know so that I can develop the content for that and get on here and talk about it. I'm scatterbrained. I go off the top of my head what I think is important. I might be out in public and something just goes off in my head and I say, okay, I want to talk about that. I was talking to one of my friends about the foremilk hind milk imbalance yesterday, and that was something that I wanted to talk about, and that's the reason I got on here today. Anybody got any questions?
I want to got some questions.
Okay, well, if you guys don't have anything or you can't think of anything right now, send me a message later or post in the group and we'll get back to you. I will be back on Thursday unless I come up with something tomorrow. I hope that you guys have a great night. Thank you so much for watching.
Somebody just joined. You're not gonna say hi to them?
Shakir.
Huh?
It's time to sign off.
You gonna say bye? Goodbye, folks.